Good day. Thank you for paying attention to my presentation. I'm going to present on the CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Let me share my screen. This is my presentation that I prepared for Professor Patrice Dunn's class. So this presentation is devoted to CBT for two reasons. First, this theory really speaks to me. And what I mean by that is that the theory conceptualizes the client as a rational being who is able to make rational decisions. And it sees the cause of, disturbances in irrational behaviors, thoughts, and cognitions. And in this, I am on board with this idea. I do think that we can persuade each other that the faulty lines of thinking can be altered and that people benefit from that. They would benefit from that. I also, the second reason why I chose cognitive behavior therapy is because this theory is evidence-based and it pays a lot of attention to the outcomes, measurable outcomes. It formulates the objectives, and it is focusing on the changes that can be measured. So that appeals to me. By using this theory, I'm hoping to maximize the usefulness of my time and my services for my clients and for myself, bringing them most relief and helping them to achieve their wellness goals. In this presentation, I will discuss the theory, its main theoretical tenets. I will touch on prominent theorists. I will discuss techniques, applications. I will cover the criticism, and I will conclude with my personal reflection. The CBT is a theory that came forward on the basis of an in connection to cognitive theory with modifications. The theories that contributed to the development of CBT are Albert Ellis, Aaron Beck, Christine Padesky, Kathleen Mooney, Donald Meichenbaum, and others. Albert Ellis is credited to be the founder of rational emotive behavior theory, REBT. Aaron Beck developed cognitive theory, CT. Christine Padesky and Kathleen Mooney brought to life strength-based cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, SBCBT. Donald Meichenbaum created cognitive behavior modification, CBM. And one of the contemporary versions of CBT that I find very interesting is so-called future-oriented or future-directed therapy, and it was founded by Janice Wilhauer. And what unites all these theories and therapeutic methods is the investigation of the connection between human behavior, cognition, and they also share the belief that the cognition can be modified that will influence behavior. Albert Ellis is one of the two theorists for whom I focus in this presentation. He theorized that emotional disturbances are closely interrelated with the irrational beliefs. According to him, we often hold very extreme and rigid beliefs, and these beliefs were acquired in childhood and later on in our life. We self-indoctrinate by repeating often distorted bits of the schooling that we received earlier, and some of these beliefs became automatic. The path to liberation from this self-indoctrination lies in challenging those patterns of thinking. And the therapists using REBT challenge clients' assumptions and dispute irrational beliefs. Ellis himself suffered from emotional problems, and he applied himself to solving these problems. He also had headaches. He detailed all that in the book REBT. If it works for me, it can work for you. And it is said that as an adolescent, he was shy around women. So he talked to 100 women in the Bronx garden. He lived in Bronx. And thus he exposed himself repeatedly to the situation that he considered to be very stressful. And in the end, he was made insensitive to it, so to speak. As a theorist, Ellis proposed we undid our beliefs and assumptions by identifying them and modifying them, and disputed them with the mediation of the therapist in order to moderate one's language describing the situation. For example, instead of "this is awful," we can say "this is inconvenient," which, will help us. For this part of my presentation, I will turn to Aaron Beck to cover theoretical tenets of cognitive theory. The principle is that depressive clients have distortions of thought, which leads to the negative interpretation of the life events. Because some people have life events, but they don't slip into depression, and then some will. So he suggested that those who do, they form a negative triad, a cognitive triad. They begin negatively viewing themselves, the world, and the future. And the idea is that these maladaptive mechanisms, coping mechanisms, are the distortions of the beneficial, positive coping mechanisms that occurs in some cases. So such mechanisms, he identified them, and I think this is a very useful identification. This is arbitrary inferences, mind reading. We suggest we know that the other person thinks. We inscribe our thoughts to others. Selective abstraction, when we take one thing, one feature of the event, and abstract it to the whole. Overgeneralization, when we form extreme conclusions based on one case or two cases. Magnification and minimization, when we magnify in our mind some event that is not in proportion to its significance, or to the contrary, we minimize the event that was really impactful for us. Personification, when we think this is really about me, this is happening to me because I'm bad or something like that. Dichotomous thinking, extreme belief that it's either one or the other. There is no middle ground, and so on. So CT states that unless these faulty beliefs are changed and modified, the conditions which led to them, they are going to bring upon these conditions once again, and behavior is going to repeat. So even if the medication was involved, the medication alone will not make such changes as challenging some of these beliefs will. What also was interesting about Aaron Beck is that he structured his many works as scientific. He paid attention to the outcomes. He made surveys with his clients. He saw what works and what doesn't. So he approached it from a very kind of positivistic point of view. And that was good because that led to significant advances. So some of the counseling techniques that are utilized within CBT are challenging irrational beliefs. So clients are taught to identify those beliefs first, because you can challenge the beliefs unless you really know what you believe. So then you dispute them with the mediation of therapists. So how do these beliefs identify? They can be, for instance, recorded. This flow of thought might be recorded, and then these statements are challenged because, for instance, the thoughts like, if I fail, I'm worthless, is a very extreme thought. So first you can present evidence against it. For instance, you don't always fail, or sometimes you fail, but it actually led to big positive outcomes in your life, and therefore you aren't worthless. This is just too much. This is just too extreme. So what I like about it in particular is that The extreme beliefs are challenged step by step, which is particularly evident in the future-oriented therapy, which breaches the unsurmountable gaps, not in one jump, but exactly in a certain degree. For instance, if a person says, you know, if I fail, I'm worthless, you can tell them, no, you aren't worthless, you are worthy of a lot, you are always succeeding, you always defeat the situation, because they aren't open to that. They aren't open to accept that. So you have to just gently challenge them on the idea that is absolutist and on the idea that one fail leads to the worthiness of the individual. Also, another technique that is being used is the counselor can teach the client to track emotions. Thus, the clients can see that some days are better than the other in the experience, and there are some particular factors that might be influencing their mood, and that they might even have some sort of cycle in their mood, or they might modify their mood by themselves. So elements of the homework are always present, which means that client makes a lot of work towards his own or her own growth. And bibliotherapy can be employed. Clients can be asked to read some of these helpful self-help books, or familiarize themselves with the theory and see what exactly they're applying to their lives. I think that CBT is extremely useful in that the majority of people, regardless of their race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and other factors, can benefit from having some of the negative thinking and negative beliefs challenged. However, I also think this is extremely important for us to observe a very fine balance here, because, of course, if a woman comes to a therapist and she complains about sexism that she experiences on her workplace, we cannot assume that everything is in her head, that she's, in reality, she's been treated fairly and she just imagines things. That will be extremely unhelpful. We do still have inequalities, systemic inequalities in our society, particularly exacerbated by race, for instance. So we have to be very careful about what kind of beliefs we are identifying as negative and distorted, and what kind of beliefs we are challenging. So CBT is particularly useful for treatment of depression and anxiety. However, it is also applied and showed good results for treatment of a host of issues that were far beyond initial scope imagined by founders. It is now used to treat post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, mood disorders such as bipolar disorder, and it is used in a variety of settings, including agencies, private practice, inpatient and outpatient settings. So one of the main criticisms of CBT is that it treats not the roots of the problem, but merely the symptoms. Some people may see it as simplistic on the surface. It's not restructuring the whole personality of the client. It's not paying a lot of attention to the childhood dreams, to the traumas of childhood. It is correcting the behavior here and now, very often time limited. This is not the psychoanalytic approach. So to me, however, this is an advantage of the cognitive behavior theory, because I might not be ready to bear my childhood traumas to a therapist. However, I might still benefit from challenging certain concrete beliefs and modifying my behavior to improve the flow of, energy between emotions, cognitions, and behavior. To apply myself to solving some particular situation, and thus, benefiting from that. So I'm hoping to delve deeper into CBT I'm looking forward to reading the book by Dennis Greenberger and Christine Padesky, which is titled Mind Over Mood. I just began looking at it. I agree that our mind should precede and take command over our mood, which is a practical analytic approach. I expect that the population I will be working with is the dwellers of the big city. This population would greatly benefit from reflecting on its negative thinking patterns and learning how to stop some of these destructive behaviors that might not improve their overall situation, in order to just boost their quality of life, their wellness, and I'm looking forward to being useful, you know. Thank you so much for stopping by, for listening to me. I'm hoping to continue presenting on these ideas, and I have run out of time. Thank you again for listening.